Live.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. We are out here at Lake Okeechobee. We're going to come to you live all day throughout our watershed as we explore our watershed. I am Melissa Landis, Education Director of Lake Worth Waterkeeper. I am out here with Renato Diaz, who you will see in just a few minutes. We also have out in the field Alex Milligan, who is doing some water sampling today throughout the lagoon, and we'll check in with her in just a few minutes. But we wanted to say thanks for showing up and hanging out with us today as we go through the different places. We'll stream, we'll come live on and off throughout the day, checking in with you. As Lake Worth Waterkeeper, again, it gets really confusing to know who we are and what we do, as we are named after our watershed. So we are Lake Worth Waterkeeper. It's confusing. Our home base is in Lake Worth Beach, and our watershed is Lake Worth Lagoon, which used to be a freshwater lake, which is now a saltwater brackish estuary that Lake O kind of empties out into the water and all the canals. It's one of the few extensively man-manipulated water systems, and it's here in Florida. So this is part of the Everglades system, and so is the Lake Worth Lagoon and its watershed. So we wanted to kind of share that with you of what your watershed is. If you are in Palm Beach County, this definitely concerns you, as this watershed takes up almost 95% of Palm Beach County. So if you are a Palm Beach County resident, please check in with us. Let us know if you have any questions. We can answer those throughout the day as well. And I will let Ronaldo take over so he can talk more about where we are and this particular first stop in our watershed tour.
Thank you for that. So, yeah, part of being a waterkeeper is we have to have, we like to be out throughout the watershed to have a continued presence to kind of keep an eye on things. We're really lucky to live in South Florida. We have a really great agency called South Florida Water Management District, and they're one of the most important agencies, government agencies in the state, and their main job is to manage water, just as the name sounds. And what do we mean by manage water? It's really important to understand that our watershed, 100% of it is controlled by humans, and we are right now at the tap of our watershed, right? So just kind of the high-level view to look at the entire system, which is what we call the greater Everglades ecosystem. That actually starts up in Orlando with the Kissimmee River, and that river grows as it flows south and eventually leads into Lake Okeechobee. And then from Lake Okeechobee, that water moves in different directions. It can go west down the Caloosahatchee River. It can go east, north of here, down to St. Lucie towards the Indian River Lagoon. It can go east right here from where we're standing and a couple other spots towards the Lake Worth Lagoon. And those three, Caloosahatchee, Indian River Lagoon, Lake Worth Lagoon, we consider those the northern estuaries of the greater Everglades. And of course, very famously, going south of Lake Okeechobee, the water is supposed to sheet flow over and head south towards Florida Bay, towards the Florida Keys. That's the Everglades, towards the Everglades National Park, the very standard definition of the Everglades that everyone knows and loves. But so right here, as being one of the northern estuaries, we're at a really important site for the Lake Worth Lagoon. So this structure right here is called Spillway 352. Obviously, Lake Okeechobee behind us. A windy day, which is pretty standard out here. The lake is obviously it's big enough that you can't see the other side, right? So second largest lake in the contiguous United States. And so it's, really affected by wind and things like that. And then we're here on the east side of the lake, and there's actually three structures that sends water towards the Lake Worth Lagoon. and we're at the middle one. This one is called Spillway 352. It's in Canal Point, and it looks like a wall, right? So if you want to pan over and kind of show, clearly not a natural river, nothing natural about it. It's a completely man-made structure. It's super important for all of our communities. One, because it helps control the level of Lake Okeechobee. That's always a constant thing to work on in water management and Everglades restoration, is managing Lake Okeechobee at that sweet spot. You don't want it too deep, because the dike that we're standing on right now, the Herbert Hoover Dike, protects the Glades communities from flooding, and you don't want so much water that it's going to compromise the integrity of that structure of the dike. And you don't want it too low, because we do need water to send to the northern estuaries and maintain salinity. Agriculture needs water to irrigate their fields, so on and so forth. So we want to find that sweet spot to manage the lake, and this is one of many structures that helps do that. You also don't want the lake to be too deep, like it has been managed over the last quite a number of years, because if it's too deep for too long, then what we call the subaquatic vegetation, you'll see SAV every once in a while in science papers, that SAV, that subaquatic vegetation, that's just fancy for underwater habitat, right? We want plants in the lake, those grasses, those things that live underwater, because those plants are what's going to clean up the lake and maintain a clean lake. If it's too deep, and as you can tell, even by the camera, the lake, especially right now on a windy day, it's not exactly clear water. It's brown. It's like yoo-hoo brown. I see a little bit of cyanobacteria in there. There's a little bit of green. And when you have that high sedimentation, that low visibility, not enough sunlight gets down to that subaquatic vegetation. So if it's too deep for too long, that subaquatic vegetation really doesn't stand a chance to survive. So we can go ahead and walk away from that little bit of cyanobacteria. Or actually, you know what? Let's walk down and see if we can get a good look of it on the camera. This time of year is actually a pretty good time of year for cyanobacteria. At this structure, Canal Point, the Spillway 352, it tends to stick around to some degree. And then on a cool day like today, it's like 72, 75 out. It's really beautiful out. It's windy, so it drops the temperature. And that really, the cyanobacteria, it generally likes or prefers warmer weather. So if you want to point down from in this direction, you can see it on the, I don't know if it shows on the camera so well, but the main color of the water is brown right now, just because it's windy and it's stirring up all that sediment. And then on top, I see some oats from the plants around, but then floating on the surface is a very little bit of cyanobacteria. It has that kind of neon green tinge to it, and it's an unfortunate thing that exists here, unfortunately, for throughout the year. Even this time of year when it's cooler, generally what happens, this spillway it's like a wall. So the wind is currently pushing this water towards the wall, and then the wall, it isn't totally a wall. There's actually a gate there to let water through. It kind of slows down and stops that water, and that stagnant water, where it's sitting here in the sunlight and it warms up a bit, feeding off the nutrient pollution, which we'll talk about throughout the day. But this stagnant water, because of the structure, there always tends to be at least a little bit of cyanobacteria at this site. It can be way, way worse, of course, where it's nothing but cyanobacteria. I'm sure if you followed us a long time, you've seen those pictures. But we tend to look at this structure quite a bit because it is the starting point of our watershed. So we'll go ahead and walk around and we'll show you the other side of this structure. Yep, we'll walk in. I'll keep talking. So another thing that's really important to note about this structure and why it's important for us to keep an eye on it is because this actually, especially on the other side, it's actually a really good fishing site, especially for the local community here, and the community here in Canal Point and Pahokee down south. This is a really good site because it gives, this structure gives a little bit of deep water that just allows fish to collect, and we'll probably see some on the other side, but it makes it a really important fishing spot. And something to think about on that fact is, this isn't like sport fishing. The people who are fishing here, they're sustenance fishing. They're feeding themselves. And that's why the cyanobacteria issue is such a big concern, especially in a place like here, because you couldn't be more directly affected by cyanobacteria than by consuming the fish that you're catching out of the water. Of course, cyanobacteria has a lot of other public health risks just by being exposed to it in the air or in the food that we eat or when it's used for irrigation and whatnot. But here there's no one fishing, but it's a really popular site usually. So if you want to show the gates down here, so you can see the gates are mostly closed, but there's always going to be a little bit of water that kind of leaks out. So, of course, the other side of this wall was Lake Okeechobee, right where we're at. And then this canal is what we call the L10 canal, and it's the canal that is in the middle. And then you can see, obviously, it goes down. And this is a really important canal to irrigate the agriculture that happens in the EAA, what we call the Everglades Agriculture Area. So this is one of the main kind of feeder canals that's sending water so that the farmers can irrigate their fields. Of course, there's the two other canals that I mentioned, north and south of here. And then if you look to the right, you can see some smoke coming from a burning field. Right now is the burn season, so they're harvesting right behind the American flag. So right before they harvest the sugar here, they burn the field, and we can talk about that throughout the day. But it's really important to note that this is the very beginning. This is the start of the Lake Worth Lagoon watershed, and it goes down these canals. It irrigates the sugar fields, which also sends water back into the canals with more pollution. And then it works its way down to the C51, which we'll show you later today. And that canal goes through our neighborhoods of West Palm Beach, Loxahatchee, Wellington, so on, where even more pollution is thrown on top. And eventually that water ends at the Lake Worth Lagoon, or goes into the Lake Worth Lagoon, which is where Alex is at right now, because right now she's currently out in the field sampling for our bacteria, which you'll see weekly. We release that map with the bacteria results. So she is out there right now, and she's going to highlight the reason why we do that, and that reason starts from up here. So go ahead, Alex, take it away, and we'll make our way around.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Yes, as Ronaldo said, I'm out here water sampling. Right now, I'm at Ocean Inlet Park in Boynton Beach. I'm on the lagoon side. It's a beautiful day. It was raining when I got out of my car. Now it's sunny and beautiful. But I am out here taking water samples, and we're mainly looking for Enterococcus bacteria, which is a common bacteria in most water systems. However, it does, we do find it in higher concentrations in areas where there is higher nutrient pollution. So just as Ronaldo was highlighting at Lake Okeechobee, and as the water moves through our watershed, it will be collecting nutrients, fertilizers, pesticides, all of this stuff. And eventually it will end up at Lake Worth Lagoon. So our lagoon, the input ratio for our lagoon is 42-1, which means that our watershed is 42 times larger than our lagoon. So that is a lot of water, a lot of nutrients and pollution to all be concentrating together in our lagoon. And so we have 13 sites that we check in the lagoon. We go from Boynton Beach all the way up to North Palm Beach Lakeside Park. You can see all of the weekly results on our website. But those 13 spots are areas that we'll check for nutrient pollution to see what's going on in the lagoon. I think Melissa mentioned that back in the 1800s or early 1900s, the lagoon was still a freshwater lake. And the reason why it then became a brackish water is because inlets were built to make traveling and like shipping of goods more convenient, right? So you didn't have to go all the way around the barrier islands. You could just cut through from the ocean and get into the communities of Jewel and West Palm Beach. And obviously that had huge ecological impacts, not just from turning the lake from fresh water into brackish salt water, more brackish water. Um, but it also had huge implications for water flow, right? So they started with the North Lake Worth Inlet, and then they built the South Lake Worth Inlet, where I'm at right now, the one in Boynton Beach, and that was to help increase the turnover, the flushing of the lagoon, because you have all of this fresh water coming in, mainly from the C51 canal that Ronaldo mentioned, but there are two other canals that will bring fresh water into the lagoon, which an estuary needs, right? We need fresh water coming in. We're not the ocean, so the fresh water coming in is what keeps the salinity lower than the ocean, keeps us brackish, which is important for estuary species. And so we have the fresh water coming in. It's just not always the highest quality fresh water, right? So it is coming in with a lot of pollution, a lot of runoff, a lot of pesticides and fertilizers and herbicides. And so we want that water to be able to get flushed out of our lagoon. And that's why the inlets are really, really important. So if you look at a map of the lagoon, especially if you look at one of like our bacteria maps, you'll see that you could almost kind of split the lagoon into three sections. You have sort of the northernmost part of the lagoon, which tends to be usually a little bit healthier in terms of bacteria count. We have more natural shorelines up there. Where it's farther away from the C51 canal that's bringing in most of the kind of less than great freshwater, great quality freshwater. You have the center part of the lagoon, which is way more urbanized, sort of around West Palm Beach, Lake Worth area, has the C51 canal that has less of the living shorelines, less of our mangrove ecosystems, less of our seagrass ecosystems. And so you'll see that the water quality there is generally lower. And then the southern part of the lagoon is kind of variable. I would say that it generally is a little bit better quality than the middle part of the lagoon, but not always. And obviously that's just one factor of water quality, right? It's a very complicated issue. But when you want to try to understand it, starting to look at the inputs and outflows of our lagoon is really helpful. So when we test our water, looking for those bacteria concentrations, as a health reason, right? You don't probably want to be swimming in areas that have super high bacteria concentrations, but B, it tells us a lot about what the nutrient situation is like in that area. The other thing I forgot to mention was that the living areas with the living shorelines, not only the reason why that can create better water quality. Oh, hi. No, you're good. It's a beautiful day at the beach. We got people out here hanging out. The reason why you want those living shorelines is not only does it help filter the water before it actually runs into the lagoon, but then you have a lot more life. You have the mangroves, you have the seagrass that will help to remediate some of those nutrients, right? Like they need nutrients to live, so they will use up some of that nutrients before organisms like cyanobacteria can like suck it up and really outcompete all the other organisms and multiply really quickly. And so it's nice, it's good to have those other vegetation, other plant life there, and even organisms like oysters that will take up those nutrients before they become a problem, before eutrophication becomes an issue. So I think that's about all I have to say right now. I'm going to start doing my water sampling, and I will rejoin you guys at different points throughout the watershed. So yeah, have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Alex. So yeah, Melissa and I will be going through the watershed as Alex will be going up the Lake Worth Lagoon sampling. I have the camera here pointing at a burn that's going on not too far. So as we go through the watershed, we'll kind of highlight some of these issues and why they're very problematic, not just for the environment, for the people, but also for the people who live around here. And unfortunately, these issues have become sort of a kind of a fact of life these days, and that's something that we as an organization really try to work hard to rectify and to move away from, because there is a better way. We do need agriculture. We obviously need places to live. The main mission of these canals is actually not to irrigate, it's actually to make sure that we're not flooded out of our communities. And so when these canals were built, that was the original intention. They have kind of evolved since then. You know, some mistakes have been made. We could be all as a whole, as a community, making better decisions, and throughout the day we will be highlighting some of that as we go through the watershed and highlight different areas. Right? And, you know, just to kind of as a reminder, we're doing this